Heidi ho, everybody. Here are your substitute video lectures for Monday, November 18th, or Tuesday, November 19th, if you're choosing to not attend class on Tuesday. And remember, if you're watching this on Monday, you're part of the Monday class, and you decide you would prefer to come to the Tuesday class, that's perfectly fine with me. I have classes at 8:30 and at 12:15. And so with Unit 5 will be fairly short because we are obviously running short on days for this semester, but Unit 5 is a very important unit. Comes up again. Most of you guys are going into nursing school, and it's going to come back up for you in nursing school. So this is a important topic, and will actually be our last topic of the course here, aside from you guys doing your presentations on your infectious diseases on the last day. So you've probably, if you've had Biology 202, you've had an introduction to the immune system before, and we are going to go into things in a little more depth in this course. So with Unit 4, we were taking a look at what it takes for pathogens. There are relatively few microbes out there that can make us sick. What allows them to do that? And so we talked about a lot of their weaponry and shielding and so forth, and toxins that some pathogenic bacteria make. All of those different types of things are special features of virulent pathogens that allow them to cause disease. And as I've emphasized throughout the semester, the vast majority of microbes that we get exposed to do not make us sick. Yes, they're coming in through our portals of entry constantly, but our immune system is so powerful it tends to get rid of them or eliminate them almost right away. Plus, many microbes simply can't get into the body in the first place. So the first little, I'm going to divide, rather than just doing one long continuous video, I'm going to divide this up into a series of shorter video clips so you don't have to watch everything all at the same time. So with this first video here, I'm going to be introducing the immune system, our host defenses. My pen's not right in here. I'm going to change over to yellow. There we go. Going to be introducing the host defenses, and that's another term for our immune system, of course. And your book has the bulk of the immune system is in chapters 12 and 13, and so everything I cover today will come from chapter 12. And you guys will see the chapter 12 material is going to correspond to our class lectures pretty well. Chapter 13, the textbook author has organized the second half of the immune system in a different way from how I have it organized, and I haven't quite wrapped my mind around how she has it organized. So just keep that in mind when we get to the second half of the immune system. It's not going to follow chapter 13 in your textbook quite as closely as it will for chapter 12. Some terminology here. The term immunology also means study of host defenses, and it's divided up into two major categories: innate immunity. And innate, almost kind of like instinct, something like that. It's something you're born with. And so these are defenses that are in place immediately at birth. You don't have to be exposed to microbes in order for these branches of your immune system to work. And these include things like your skin and your mucous membrane barriers, but it also includes many of your white blood cells are just naturally programmed to respond to things like infection and injury, and they'll just naturally attack most types of microbes. They're programmed to be able to do that even when they haven't seen those particular microbes before. All right, so that's branch number one. Branch number two is called adaptive immunity, sometimes acquired immunity, and that's going to be the focus of chapter 13. This is what we usually think about with immunity when you hear about things like antibodies. For example, antibodies are weapons that we make against very specific things that we get exposed to that are foreign to the body, and many of those are pathogens, but not everything. So that branch of your immune system is very powerful. You make very specific weapons against very, very specific things that you get exposed to. And we're mainly going to be talking about microbes that we get exposed to, since this is a microbiology class. But just keep in mind, your immune system does not only respond to microorganisms. It'll respond to things like an inappropriate or if you had an organ transplant and that organ wasn't properly tissue matched to you, this branch of your immune system would respond to that. Pollen grains, toxins, things like that that your immune system can respond to as well. So it goes beyond microbes. This second branch of your immune system responds to molecules called antigens, and antigen, that term actually means antibody generator. And you've probably heard of antibodies before, and I know you did if you took Biology 202. Antibodies are actually protein weapons that this second branch of your immune system makes that will attach to things that are foreign to your body. And they basically work like tags to let other elements of your immune system know, hey, this is something that's foreign and we need to clear it out. But antigens are really molecules, and your immune system is supposed to respond to ones that are foreign to your body. It's not supposed to respond to antigens that are part of your own cells and tissues. A third aspect of our defenses is that as humans, we have a species resistance against most pathogens that are out there in the wild. As we've talked about before, pathogens are very, very specific about their hosts. And you guys know that. You're not going to get infected by a tomato virus. You're not going to even get infected by most viruses that infect your dog or cat because they're so specific. And it's true for bacteria as well. There are bacterial pathogens that will infect plants, but not humans. Or there are bacteria that infect certain mammals, but don't infect us. In other cases, it's not quite that cut and dry, but that's called species resistance. When there are pathogens or microbes that are pathogens for other living things that can't actually infect us and use us as a host, that's called species resistance. Okay, the lines of defense. So your immune system can actually be divided up into lines of defense, and this refers to the order in which a pathogen is going to be exposed to different parts of your immune system, different weapons, different warriors. The first line really just refers to your barriers, your skin and your mucous membranes. And then, as we'll see, there are chemicals that are always present along your skin and mucous membranes that contribute to the first line, and they have antimicrobial properties. They're kind of like natural disinfectants, antiseptics, and antibiotics that are always hanging out in your skin and mucous membranes. Then genetic differences, we've talked a little bit about that before. Different people have different natural immunity in some cases to particular microbes, and a lot of times we don't even know what the basis of that is yet, but we all know some people are more susceptible to certain types of infectious agents than others. Then you have your second line, and that's where we'll spend most of the lecture clips for today, and then on Wednesday or Thursday, depending on which class you're in, we'll finish up the second line at that time. This consists of several of your white blood cells that are programmed to attack microbes that are invading the body, but they do it in a non-specific way. That means this branch of your immune system, when it mounts an attack, it's just looking for and attacking things like bacteria in general, fungi in general, virus-infected cells in general. It's not looking for a super specific type of microbe. Like, it's not looking for H1N1 influenza versus herpes simplex virus versus HIV versus salmonella. It's not getting down to that type of nitty-gritty level. The second line forces of our immune system are very good at just recognizing microbes in general and taking care of them right away. So that's a big aspect of our immune system. And then finally, the third line, this is what you usually think about and study as far as immunity. This is the more powerful branch of your immune system. It takes longer for it to kick in after you get exposed to something for the first time. And this one generates very specific weapons that target very specific pathogens. So we're going to make antibodies that will attach to this particular strain of flu, or this particular strain of salmonella bacteria, or this particular parasitic worm species. It's very, very specific, very powerful. And the third line is also the branch of your immune system that develops memory. So, and this is where when we think about having immunity to something, it's really this third line that generates that longer term memory and immunity. I've been exposed to chickenpox, and so I'm not going to get a chickenpox infection again because this branch of my immune system has developed memory to that. And what that means is it generated all these really powerful weapons the first time I was exposed to the pathogen. And so when I get exposed to it again, it's going to unleash those weapons much, much, much more rapidly and wipe out that pathogen before it can make us sick. So those types of things fall into the third line defenses, and we're going to talk about those when we move on to chapter 13. All right, this is a really good table from your textbook, which is highlighting, illustrating for you these different lines of defenses. So up here at the top, host defenses in general, and it gets divided up into two categories: innate or non-specific, which you see there. Again, these are defenses you're born with. You don't have to be exposed to the microbe or other foreign thing for these forces to kick in and work for you. Acquired or adaptive immunity over here, these are your third lines of defense. These are things that only get activated when you get exposed to a particular microbe, and they're very, very, very specific. Okay, and the first lines, as I've already mentioned, first lines of defense include things like barriers to microbes getting into your body in the first place. There are antimicrobial chemicals that are present along those barriers all the time. There are genetic aspects, like the people who have a natural immunity to HIV. They're rare, but they do exist, and we actually do understand the genetic basis for that. In other cases, we may not yet understand the genetic basis for why particular people have a natural immunity to particular pathogens. The second line defenses, which we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about, include the good old phagocytosis process that you've heard about before. Inflammation is a process of your second line defenses. Kicks in right away. You don't have to have been exposed to a particular specific microbe in order for inflammation to get triggered. Inflammation gets triggered anytime you have an infection or an immunity or an infection or an injury. Fever, we talked a little bit about fever as we were going over the chapter 11 material, and I mentioned that it does have benefits, and that is actually considered to be one of the processes of your second line defenses that help protect you from nasty, evil pathogens that are trying to harm you. And finally, there are some antimicrobial proteins. These are protein molecules that function as weapons to help us fight off lots of microbes that are trying to invade the body. And so we'll talk about some of those as well. And then finally, the second half over here, you'll get into acquired or specific immunity. And this branch of your immune system revolves around your B cells and your T cells, also known as your B lymphocytes and your T lymphocytes. They are your chief warriors of this branch of your immune system. And so we'll see that the B cells, for example, get activated and make antibody weapons for you. T cells, are several different kinds of T cells that play different roles in this branch of your immune system. For example, there's a type of T cell called a cytotoxic T cell and the job of those types of T cells is to go into tissues where you have an infection and find the virus-infected cells or the bacterial or cells infected with bacteria and torpedo those cells and kill them to help prevent the pathogen from spreading. All right, so I'm going to end the first little video clip there, and then I'm going to move in on the second one. We're going to talk more about these barriers that we have, the first lines of defense.